Canberra Metalheads.
The Archives.
Me and You Season 2. Alright, let's kick it.
Welcome to the interview section of Canberra Metalheads. You got Marky Malphas
And JDecay.
and we've got the guys here from Blissphorus ready to chat more about the song and the album. So from left to right, we've got
Pete doing bass and guitar.
Cool.
And I'm Jeannie, I'm vocals and keys.
Cool.
And I'm Dave, I'm drums.
Awesome. Good to have you guys here. We're recording this episode at the basement in the quiet, Sunday after the night before, which is cool to have it nice and quiet in here and chat some more about music.
Get some chompies.
The reason I'm gaining weight is because that restaurant's open. It's just convenience, I guess. But man, we're not shy of the basement here. You guys had the album launch here only a few weeks ago.
Yeah, just last week actually.
Oh, yeah.
Last Friday.
And how'd all that go? I know that it was on the calendar for a while. You guys had really cool flyers out. Just all over the place. How'd things turn out?
We were really happy with it, actually. We wanted just a night with a bunch of bands that we like and friends and family.
Yep.
And I think we achieved that exactly.
Yeah, it was great. It was good fun.
We had about 40 or 50 in the back room.
Yep.
So it was a really nice evening.
Yeah. Excellent. I notice a lot of the bands say the back room has more of a sort of as far as
intimate vibe.
Yeah, like more intimate vibe. You guys feel that on stage as well?
Definitely. Yeah, I think we're all fans of the back room over this one.
Yep.
I think if you have 40 or 50 people in the front room, it's like tumbleweeds rolling through you sometimes.
But it feels like a crowd out the back. So yeah.
When we booked it, we could have chosen either room actually. And we specifically wanted that room.
Cool.
Wanted Jules on sound.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, right.
He's a magician in that room.
Yeah, man.
He gets it to sound just magic, both on stage and out. I know there's not a lot of room between on stage and out the front, but it just sounds great. Easy to play.
Easy to work with.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Jules.
Yeah, exactly, man.
I think he likes what we do generally, so I think he has a little bit of an interest in maybe going above and beyond. I don't know. We always get fantastic sound with him. So.
I think it's when you've got an ear for it. I know that obviously sound guys can mix via levels, but I think this came up when we were talking to one of the other bands. Like, if they know the songs, they know what they're meant to sound like as well. Yeah. Like it tends to be easier to mix what you know.
I think it was interesting too because I'd promised Jules I'd get the album to him a couple of weeks in advance and he'd have a listen and everything would be great. And then, stuff happens.
We got it to him.
Things conspire. He had 24 hours with the album before the gig and he was still in soundcheck saying, "Oh, can you play me this section from track 4? I want to hear how that sounds." So he's a professional, that guy.
And he did do that. There were some effects and things taken from the album that he was attempting to replicate for us live. So there's certainly an advantage to them understanding where you're coming from and how you want things to sound so they can pursue it.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was a fun little night. Escape Syndrome acoustically.
That was a bit of a novelty.
Slicing his hand open the week before.
Yeah, right.
Baron Spencer's.
We actually had the guys from Escape Syndrome on the show, and funny that you mentioned that because that was the interview that it came up that we were talking about when the sound guy knows the songs.
Oh, right.
But we were talking about when the fans know the song. It's the difference between people being able to be like, "Oh, you guys play that better at this venue," or I think that bit you added in there at the end of the solo is awesome, or things like that.
Yeah, to notice the nuance and the changes you make as you play through live. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the goal really for any musician, is to get people interested enough that they absorb what you do well enough to notice those things when they see you play live.
I guess like on the new album, we've got a bunch of layering and other stuff that we don't do live, so people might actually see a difference now that it's out there. We've got a lot of stuff tucked away in the background on the album, and
Yeah, they haven't really had the opportunity
but
to
we
absorb
prefer
it
not to
before.
play with backing tracks or samples or anything
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
We just like to belt it out. So
It does change things a little bit. I've noticed the last couple of months since I've heard the album properly.
Yeah.
You know, when you're tracking, you're recording, you
Absolutely.
don't really hear it properly. Now I get up on stage and there's certain sections of certain songs where I'm hearing what's on the album and
Yep.
it's not coming out of the band. It's like, oh shit, I better learn how to play something like that on the keys.
even when we're rehearsing, like I'm hearing bits, you know, some of the layers in my head as we're playing through it, but they're not there.
They're not there,
rehearsed.
yeah.
But I think we still, it comes across very well live without samples or backing tracks.
Well, it's a bit more
So-
raw. That's the plan, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, so albums, we've talked about that on the show with the guys from Clarity Chaos. I actually went down and watched them record that one
Oh,
at
cool.
Yeah.
a studio called The Studio. And they've done a couple of bands lately, but that was their first metal band
Oh, right.
that they've done there for the album. And when the album came out, Jamie gave me a copy of it and we're listening through and we're like, he's like, man, I've heard this track so many times. And so you get numb to the sound of the track because it becomes part of the process.
Yeah, yeah.
The way they actually recorded is they came in, Darren smashed out all the drums in the first day, then took 4 days off and came back and listened to what they'd been doing in the meantime, so they had a fresh set of ears over it. It was interesting to hear that they did that dynamic. Also, he was practicing to do his other projects as well, so he had to smash it out in one day. Came back and then he retracked the drums, and they got a take between the two.
Yeah, right.
So that's how they worked it. But how did you guys go? Oh, first of all, where did you record?
A little studio called Neon Dog
Okay.
in our backyard.
Yeah.
So Dave and I, 4 years ago now,
Something like that. Yep.
built a studio and a garage in our backyard, which was a bit of a University of YouTube, figure it out as you go along type project.
With lots of swearing along the
Oh
way.
yeah, man! It took we'd planned to. I think it was a 4-month build was the plan, and it took us about
It basically took
12
a year
months
in the end.
to finish it off. Anyway, so we did it at home, which was a real luxury.
Yep.
A real luxury to be able to take the time and do things like that.
Yeah.
Go back and have a listening, and that's actually not what we wanted.
I guess we approached it very differently to go into a studio and smashing it out when you're paying for their time.
Yeah.
Like we've probably worked on it for a year and a half.
Yeah, it was spread out over a fair period
So,
of time.
we track
yeah.
some guitars, track some drums, and then, go back to rehearsing for a gig or whatever we're doing, and then go back and do a bit more and a bit more. And so I think we're fairly numb to the songs in the end too. When it's over a year and a half.
You do get that way, definitely, if you listen over and over. And of course, when you're analysing, you lose a bit of perspective on the song
I think it's
as
different
an
for-
entity, rather than as a bunch of technical aspects to do with sound and performance.
But it was also nice having that time and sort of not the pressure, I guess, of a studio.
Definitely,
So,
yeah.
we could go back and, over multiple evenings or multiple weeks, might just work on one part sort of thing. So, and get it right and try different things and, yeah.
And I think given it took so well, I know, given it took so long, the first couple of songs that Dave tracked drums on, we ended up, I keep saying we, Dave did like 85% of this. Pete and I just came along and made some noise. He went back and retracked them again, a year later, and it made a huge difference to sound quality. I mean, we're learning how to use our own space and, it took a long time, but I think it was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll know that when we retrack this episode as a Canberra Metalheads best of in 12 months' time. We can then feel that same experience.
It's interesting though, that perspective issue, because I didn't listen to any of the parts for, I reckon, a good 6 months in between finishing tracking. Probably the last guitar overdubs is probably the last stuff that really came through.
Yep.
And Dave's out there every day, not quite,
He spent
working on
countless
something
hours
else.
on this thing.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it comes back into the house from this gorgeous little room in the backyard. It comes back into the house, into the real world, and it's actually an album. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Because Dave's done all the mixing and mastering and all that sort of stuff. So you spend a lot more on it than you've got a lot more invested than any of us.
I've been a little more buried in it, I guess.
Is the like the dad of the band there with like the like you've worked on the kids' science project
A little bit,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? Like just like you know what's up, and you all submit it together. But it's like I've worked too long and hard on this.
It's really interesting to keep it all in the family like that. Yeah, there's no external producer, there's no tracking engineer, there's no mixing engineer, it's just us. And it's interesting to have a look then at this piece of plastic on the table and think, shit, we made that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's nice. Like, I've sort of said, I've played in bands on and off since high school, and I've never got a finished CD or album together. So it's a nice thing to have. Yeah.
Man, I was talking about this, like high school bands.
Yep.
I think the first little... I'm not in a band. I play around, I play bass on the side, I do a little bit of this and that. The first ever little project that I ever had was a thing. We called ourselves the Violent Smurfs. Just played Nirvana covers.
Yep.
Like it's just funny to hear the evolution of things. And you mentioned high school bands, and like after high school you get into other projects. Guys like when we interviewed the guys from Witch Skull, Joel and Marcus in like Armored Angel and Looking Glass, type level stuff. Those guys used to after school hang out when they were 15 years old and play vinyls, at their place. It was just all that starts at that level. Yeah. I think that music teachers in school have a butterfly effect on massive project, like you don't know. Telling some dude in high school to like, oh, look, there's too many keyboards being used. Do you want to just grab a guitar for today so that we can finish a final assessment could eventually equate to like the next big band.
I think there were a lot of bass players formed in high school bands because there were too many guitarists too. I've definitely heard that story a bunch of times where... Like we've got 4 guitarists but no bass player who wants to switch over, and next thing you know you've got a bass player. So.
I think singers are also thin on the ground in high school too.
Yeah, that's another thing because in that awkward high school years, no one wants to be the front person. Everyone wants to be the one that can step up and do a solo. But then when they're done, people don't look at them anymore.
You get a break from being the centre of attention. Although occasionally you find people who don't mind being the centre of attention.
Well, occasionally. But, no one really wants to be, even people who stand on chairs and yell, look at me. It's interesting being a bit older now and chatting with the guys up front. Seppi loves being the centre of attention, but he and I talk about how nerve-wracking it is. We do it. We love it at the moment. But you don't really want to do it.
Oh man, I've known Seppi for years, and that's the same thing. Like you see him go up and do crazy frontman stuff, but then when I do comedy, it's like, man, I couldn't do that.
Oh God, me too. I'm
with him
Seppi
there.
on that.
Man, it's just like, man, you've got like I've seen him with gigs here, and you've seen all sorts of. Nights here where Seppi or anyone in that scene has been up the front playing in front of all these people. Like I've seen a 90s cover night and is playing to a packed room, and he's like, oh man, you got balls to do comedy.
I feel the same way. It's too exposing, man. At least with the band, there's in my case, there's 2 other people on stage you can kind of hide behind. You're all on your own up there, dude.
Even though you're the front person.
It's like the way you do it is pretend you've got a band behind you. I guess.
Fair enough.
So, like you see the comedy band stuff, but I know that so you mentioned that you do a lot of the album and stuff was like in mixing and editing and all that sort of stuff. But then you've got obviously the bass, the low end, and things like that. How is it to put it all together? I know everybody has their own picture of their own task, but I guess when you're doing an album, you've got to think of everybody.
Yep.
How was it putting it all together in one finished product?
Well, I guess when I say I play bass, I actually play guitar because we don't have a bass player, and we actually split up the guitar signal and drop it down through some effects, octave down and stuff like that. So I'm doing both guitar and bass parts.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's a little bit of a different dynamic and sound, I guess. We've in the past we've done some gigs with bands that have done this sort of thing, like King of the North and Dallas Frasca and stuff like that.
Okay.
And something I wanted to try, and it actually worked out pretty well. So I guess in terms of recording, we'd start with some drum tracks.
Yeah,
just rough guide tracks.
We tried a couple of different approaches along the way, but generally we'd have something by way of a drum guide, and then start building from guitars,
there. And then just start working through all the different, instruments, and sort of add your layers and your vocals last, I guess. So
yeah, when it comes to some of those things, like the bottom end is generally filled by a bass sound, a split from a guitar into a bass sound, and some of the keys.
We would track, like, even though we're splitting up the guitar signal and I'm playing both parts live at the same time, we'd track them all separately, so I'd just play the bass parts, for the recording sort of thing, and maybe play some different bass parts to what I do live and add some more stuff in and that sort of thing.
I don't remember, did you ever actually play a bass?
No.
No, you always played the guitar.
But I didn't pick it up for the recording.
Yeah.
No.
Cool.
You've actually got that bass now.
I know. I got to learn how to play bass. Anyway, not for this project. So not having any bass on the album, like bass guitar on the album at all, is a little bit different, I think you'd say.
Yeah.
But it's what we do. We don't play bass guitar on stage.
Also plays a bit of keys. Dave added some keys in for the recording, which you obviously don't do live while you're playing drums.
Yeah, it's a little tricky.
So there's certain sections where the keys add a lot of bottom end too. So
yeah, that definitely contributes.
But it's also it's not just the recording process, the songwriting process. We don't tend to... It takes a while for us to write a song. We don't tend to just kind of go, oh yeah, that's good enough. We'll come out with a kernel of an idea and things will happen, and then the next thing you go, we need another section. Someone go and write another section.
We're not really a band that sort of just jams on an idea and it comes out. Like, I tend to write something, I'll send it to these guys, Dave might come up with some parts or whatever, drum parts, but then we'll start looking at it once we're familiar with it, I guess, and we take our time. Like, songs seem to take a few months to get together.
Yeah.
And I think we're making it a bit hard on ourselves sometimes too with the stuff we're writing now. I think we're trying to push ourselves a little bit more.
But
even more so than what's on the album.
Yeah, and some of those sonic decisions about do we need a bottom end sound here? Does Jeannie need to learn how to play with more than two fingers at a time type stuff? Happens in the writing process. So recording was more about capturing that idea rather than adding layers for the sake of it.
Right, I get that.
They were written to sound a certain way, and we can't always achieve that on stage. So the chance to make it sound the way we'd hoped that it might sound on the album was really cool.
As close as you can to a live performance in album form.
And adding all those things that you can't do live.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of stuff in there, but a lot of it is tucked sort of right in the background on the album. So I think when we play live, you still get the gist of what it is.
Yeah, in essence, it's our live set, but there are a number of other aspects. Some of those were sonic decisions too, which is they came about during the mix phase, and just the realisation that at particular points the guitar might go up high enough that it opens up a gap between the guitar and the bass sound from a frequency perspective, not from a musical one. So there were a few things that got added simply to fill those gaps and to make everything sound coherent the whole way through, or hopefully.
We hope it sounds coherent.
But yeah, that was kind of a learning experience for me as well, to realise that some of those instrumentation decisions came down purely to sonics.
Yep.
And that it wasn't about this needs something to make it more interesting, or this needs something to add energy or whatever, but simply to fill out the sound and to round out that frequency response.
The songs carry enough weight on their own, we think, as it is. So, and we generally have a pretty good response when we play them live.
Yep.
So, yeah, just adding a bit of colour and texture, I think, for the album too. So,
yep.
Yeah, perfect. I know that some background on Jay, he went from bass to guitar over the years. So it's be cool to hear like the him weigh in on what it'd be like to have a guitar playing the low end.
Yeah.
So I've played around with the split before.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's just different techniques for different things.
Yeah, we kind of wanted, the three of us, I think we have a nice dynamic. We get along really well, and it's nice being in a three-piece band. We don't want to introduce a fourth or fifth member or anything like that. So, and this was something I'd wanted to try for a long time.
Yeah.
And we tried it, and I went, hey, this actually works pretty well. Let's refine it and stick with it.
Cool.
So it's a bit of a different dynamic on stage, I think. So
You see a lot of the heavier bands that just have like 9-string guitars, and they don't have a bass guitar because they don't need to get
That will do it
frequency
too.
range.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So I don't know. I think that depends on how you play the instrument, is what it's used for.
Yep.
yeah,
And whether you're using it to fill space, or whether it be an instrument, or whether it's all different, man. Bass is used for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It's a fun instrument.
It's like you can see it as a front piece as well. I know that
Absolutely.
a lot of the like that whole 90s scene with like the metal hip hop stuff, you'd have guys like Korn, Limp Bizkit, all that sort of stuff, just having like their bass guitarist as a front man as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Or so Les Claypool and those kind of like technical next level kind of funky bass players, and then you've got like dudes from bands like Necrophagus and stuff who are like doing exactly what the guitars are doing or more. Origin with he's doing sweeps at 62 notes per beat per bar at like 260 BPM.
Wow.
So, like,
or you have bands like the Omnific, which we saw recently.
Oh man,
support
those guys
Cog
are amazing.
up at Wollongong. 2 bass guitars and drums, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
and then you see dudes like there was a bass player here in Canberra called Lachlan. I think he was in
We know
Looking
Lachlan.
Glass.
Yeah.
you know Lachlan.
And so he would play bass, but he'd be like lead bass.
Yeah.
And then he'd play like an organ with his feet, because he had taken the foot pedals off a Moog, and would play like the actual bass notes with his feet while he was playing lead bass over the top, and, like for that stonery rock.
Insane.
Kind of big doom sound.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, you mentioned before the 3-piece. We hear that with bands, as we mentioned before, bands like Witch Skull, that they've tried like an extra member and they're happy to keep it in for. A callback to that episode, a funny thing that came up was the tuning, and it's part of the reason why we talk more about tuning and equipment and gear.
And recording process.
Because it all came up with that episode that, that's a really cool aspect behind the band, because not always when you see a band play live, you pick up on all the gear. You might be like, oh, cool, he's got this brand and that sort of stuff, but like it's a chance to talk more about specifically what's worked for you and what's not worked for you. But what came up in that episode is basically Marcus had to change the tuning on the guitar because Tony was just like, I'm not changing my standard bass tuning.
High versus low.
You change the guitar tuning. It's just hilarious. If you listen back to the episode, that there's a section there. Tony just goes, bass guitars have 4 strings, man. He's got this Brooklyn accent.
Yep.
Bass guitars have four strings, man. Bumper, bumper, bumper. Write that down. 4 strings.
Well, I did end up making, I don't even know what tuning it is, but it's tuning to fit my range vocally more than anything.
Yeah, most of our
else.
stuff is sort of drop C sharp and drop C, which works with your range,
Yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we started writing, just Pete and I, I think it was in your spare bedroom.
Acoustically, we were just doing some
with
covers,
an acoustic guitar.
and we got one song.
We got one
together.
song going, and we thought, oh, this is kind of cool, but I can't hit that note that I want to hit. Next thing we know, Pete's tuning down. The whole band now is down in this kind of, as you say, dropped C sharp. Is that what
Drop
you
C
said?
sharp, and yeah, some songs are drop C that we're starting to write now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I obviously like the heavier guitar sound, but it suits Jeannie's range very well. So yeah,
Perfect.
and we were doing this acoustic thing. It was just going to be a duo doing some covers and maybe one or two originals, and we thought this is actually sounding decent. Why don't we see if Dave wants to come on board with drums?
Yeah.
And so kind of spiraled from there, I guess. So
Cool.
Yeah, transformed a bit, didn't it? From
yeah,
acoustic in the
And I
voice
guess-
to a fairly heavy band in the end, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we have sort of heavier parts, but we have a lot of big ambient and clean sections
Yep.
and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I think we're just writing stuff that we enjoy. Like, you might be able to hear some of our influences, but I don't really think we sound like anyone in particular, which is a good thing. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're just doing it for the enjoyment of it, I think, at the moment, not really writing for other people. So
Yeah, it's perfect, man. It's a bit
Mm.
like we had so as part of the album launch, which they actually had they
Yep.
had
Oh, yeah.
Grand Duke playing for the support on that gig,
Yep.
and then we had them on the show because I was like, that was really cool to
Yep.
see that, and it's similar approach to what they had. They just don't categorize themselves as a genre. They know what bands they play well with on a bill,
yep.
but it's what they want to write and they want to play. Speaking of tuning, by the way, it's audio, so they can't see what I'm talking about, but we're at the basement, and if anyone's been to the bar, one of the funniest questions I've been asked is, what tuning is that top string in? Because behind the bar there's the guitars, and the top one is legitimately like a one, it's about a 1/4 inch cable, and it's hanging nearly touching the next string. And I just think that's a cool concept for a night when I was asked. It was like a Doom night where Bellwitch and Conan played.
that's what they need.
And it's nearly the touch that the band needed, where the top string touches the next string because it's so low.
You just hear those strings rattling. Yeah.
Third octave drop E.
When you say third octave, they mean it's like touching the next string. It's like the strings were like at the keyboard.
Yeah.
It's touching the next octave. Back to
The album.
the relatable, non-visual part of of the podcast. We mentioned before keyboards and adding that to the band. We've actually had now 3 bands with keyboards in it, and with the addition of keyboards to Jay's project as well with Inhuman Remnants, adding that element to the band, which is cool. Like I said before, Jay's the tech knowledge standover man for when I can't
Stand over.
I mean, anyone that just heard me try to explain octaves knows that I'm in over my head already. So, have you always had? I know that we had previously a band on the show that had added keyboards later. Was it always something that you guys had, or was it that came in later?
That's actually a really good question.
It came in a little later. It actually started
He
because
remembers.
I had written a drum part for
He
one
wrote
of the
the album.
tunes.
Why you remember? Just messing around.
I'd
with
written a drum part for one of the tunes that incorporated some triggered samples.
Yep.
Playing them, but samples. And we sort of came to the realization that it would be nice to incorporate more of that. And while we're at it, then if we got a controller for Jeannie to trigger some samples, it might as well have some keys on it as well, and she could start adding layers. So it grew out of that. We got what is a pretty cheap and cheerful controller, and it was just running sounds out of GarageBand on a laptop, and and I think that's why they're creeping in more and more. Just going back to what you were saying, is that they're so versatile. Yep. And it's so easy to set yourself up with something that's so versatile that it seems almost crazy to not include them, even if they're only being played occasionally. You just open up so many possibilities in a band by having that element in there. So,
and I mean, I love it because I get to tell people that I play keys, but I don't know what I'm doing. I can't play keys. I can hit notes.
Yep.
So.
Well, that's playing keys, really.
I know,
you can't play piano in a formal sense,
but
actually,
describe what they're doing.
It's like the Guitar Hero of musicians.
Oh,
it is. It kind of is. It kind of is.
So it starts with this. We'll do a little bit of, can you just do these 2 notes?
I'm going to get hate from you, from the 2 other keyboardists we've had on the show before.
It may not be for other keyboardists, but it's absolutely true for me. It is a little bit like that. But I think it starts with that, play these 2 notes. Yeah, I can play 2 notes, no problem.
Yep.
Okay, how about you try and play 3 notes? Oh yeah, I can do that, no problem. You know what would be really cool if we had keys going under that guitar line. Oh shit! All right, and try and figure out how to play that. And I'm just, I think there's one out of the blue actually, one track on the album where I actually wrote a keyboard line.
Yep.
And it blew my mind that I was able to do it. And it's really cool, and I don't think I'll ever be able to do it again. But it kind of starts with that, what if we kind of, the ability to, and having our own jam room and our own recording studio means that we have that, we have that opportunity to just say what if a lot.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work,
we try a bunch of stuff, and a lot of stuff doesn't work out, and we'll ditch it or change it around. And you're certainly not playing the keys all the way through. No. Like, you're singing first.
Yeah.
That's your thing.
Yeah, I think the 3-piece is part of that motivation as well. The fact that we are relatively limited in how many things we can throw at an audience. So anywhere where we can to add some extra elements is a good thing. So
and as we've said, we want to be able to replicate it live, sort of without samples and stuff like that.
Yep.
So,
it's good to hear, as well as you guys adapt differently to different notes, changing the style of what you write. It also changes how you write and how you play. So like you mentioned before, now all of a sudden I'm writing for keyboard as opposed to it's not a backup instrument, it can be a front piece now. So as you guys evolve, it also
it's creeping
adds
in
to it.
Creeping in more and more, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's even little things like just at the very beginning of the project, I've been singing for a long time.
Yep.
I had no idea that I could sing some of the parts that we've written for this. I've been singing since I was 3, and I still didn't know I could necessarily do that.
Yep.
So being able to explore those things, it's one of the other benefits of being a 3-piece with 3 people who know each other well. I don't ever think if I make a mistake I'm going to get laughed at or pointed at, or what the hell did you do that for?
I guess we're friends.
So it just frees us up a
we're
bit.
friends first, I guess. So it's very democratic, and we're quite comfortable to call it how it is. If we don't like something, if we do like something, no one's going to get upset or anything like that.
Yep.
It's one of the few bands I've been in where there's no politics or anything like that.
It's the key to being happy for longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just bands, it's like relationships. And it is a relationship, isn't it? Like
Absolutely,
everything is all...
They're definitely like marriages.
It's exactly... the whole, like, talk about it, get it out, do the thing that you need to do to fix it, learn from it, and evolve, as opposed to dwelling on the thing. It's legitimately like a relationship. It's just but it also produces. It's very public. Like, you guys can. How well the band's meshing and how interesting the songs are and how, much progression you guys get affects what people see on stage. So
definitely,
it changes everything.
Yeah, and I think that affects the relationship as well. The thing you don't tend to have in a marriage or a personal relationship is other people's opinions weighing in heavily on how you should behave with each other. But with a band, you have that aspect as well. Everybody's getting feedback from friends, from people at shows, and that weighs on their minds and contributes to then how they view something that used to be only between a few of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of them last a few years and then start to struggle is because all of that outside influence creeps in that you don't have when you first get together and just jam and nobody's hearing the songs and nobody cares really what you're doing. So you all just get to work amongst yourselves. But then you add this whole other layer of external input to a relationship that can be hard enough to juggle just between the 2 or 3 or 4 of you that are involved. So
well, like in any marriage every few months doesn't need to go up in front of a bunch of people to show how good the marriage is going.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
and be judged for
I
it.
call that family gathering.
Exactly.
That's
Maybe
called
Christmas
scrutiny.
there is a bit of that, I suppose.
That's called a barbecue. But that's how it all works, and it's good to see you guys are all meshing well and producing some products,
stuff.
and all under your own steam, which is cool.
Love the DIY.
We've really enjoyed having that influence over it, that control over it. So
so everything you're doing is it's like I said, even the flyers, I was looking for the bit to peel the back off because I thought it was a sticker. It was so thick, it's just like all quality stuff, which is really cool.
I think we're more about, we try and aim for quality and not quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And speaking of some products and things, as part of this episode, we'll be doing a giveaway as well. So you've got there's some shirt, stubby holders, and also a chance to win the new album as well. So as part of this episode, there's a Facebook post. You got just check that for the details, but that's what the prize pack we're looking at for this episode.
Thanks so much for that.
And thank you to you guys for bringing that in.
Thank you for having us on board. We appreciate it.
Man, always let you guys came to me and sort of initiated it at first. You guys were on the radar, obviously, because we've had Escape Syndrome on the show before, and I follow closer. I kind of the way that social media algorithms work. More interactions with bands means that you're going to see their content more. So obviously Escape Syndrome led to you guys, which then led to us being able to have this chat today. So thanks for coming on the show, and
thanks for having us.
Talking about the album and the band.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Been listening to the episode with Blissphorus on Canberra Metalheads. Hello and welcome to the interview section of Canberra Metalheads. You got Nick Oliveri from Queens of the Stone Age, and also the Nick Oliveri project as well, coming through the basement. This one here is a fairly quick release episode, so this one as we're here on Wednesday night, and the show goes out this week, and we've got tour announcement dates coming up for the rest of Australia, so that's cool to have on the bill. And like I said, man, we're getting big international bands or acts coming through Canberra. Cool. And you're on that list, man, so it's really cool to be hanging out. Really humbling to have you here. Cool, I've been working at the basement since 2012, man, and I never thought I'd be sitting down with some of these big names in the scene. So
yeah, great, man. It's great to be here. I'm trying to wind down from the travel, and but I'm doing a good job here,
Yeah,
I'm doing all right. That's all right.
You need a beer?
No, I'll be all right. I'll get one later.
Cool. Now that's another thing too. Like, we like to make sure everyone's sorted. Yeah,
so you gotta keep them full of piss.
Yeah, keep everyone happy, man. I dig that we can hang out and talk. Obviously, this is a big tour. All dates are fairly close together. How long's it been since you've been on a tour?
I got home. I've been out since April 9th.
Yep.
Started in Ireland and did acoustic dates for about a month.
Yep.
And then my band flew over. on the Generator, and we did about 14 dates.
Yeah.
Then they flew home, and I stayed back and recorded with a band called the Sons of Alpha Centauri in England.
Yep.
I've been writing lyrics and doing vocals with them.
Yeah.
And Alfredo Hernandez from Caius plays drums on it. So that's a good project I got coming up. And then I went home for about 2 days, and I had to get to Detroit, which takes 2 days to drive there. So I got my van, registered it, insured it, got my band, drove my van to Detroit, started a tour with Church of Misery with Mondo Generator open up from Japan, this band, and toured around, and we got to Nashville.
Yep.
I flew back to Europe for the Dwarves, playing some dates with them, and I just got home a week ago. I had a water pipe break at my house, so I was digging that up in the yard. And then I got on a plane and came here.
Oh, man.
So I've been just like, my whole year's booked out.
Yep.
I get home, I go do more Dwarf stuff. And so I kind of have my whole year booked out. I'm going to Brazil with Mondo Generator. We're making a new record in August. I go back to Europe with the Dwarves in August, and then I come back and I make a record with Mondo Generator, a new one. Then I have some scattered dates until October, and then November I go to Brazil with Mondo, and then I finish out the rest of the year with the Dwarves. So, and I start back up with Mondo in January, February, and March. So, got my whole year into next year booked up.
Man, that's full on. Like that's tour life there. That's on the road.
Staying busy and keeping out of trouble and just keeping myself going. You know.
Yeah.
If I was feeling strong, I got to keep going. You know.
I get it, man.
It's like any other job. I just happen to have a job that I really, really like.
That's cool. Cool to hear.
I mean, but if I was working doing anything else, I would have a schedule, you know. And so I tried to book my whole year out so I could stay busy and know what I was going to do. Because sometimes months from now I go, what do I do now? And this way I know what I'm doing and I can keep it rolling, you know.
Yeah.
Keep myself busy.
I get that, man. I understand with a lot of touring bands that we interview, like it's full on life on the road. I'd imagine, man. Like from the tour and things like that, and over the years, is there any like cool tour stories, moments that you were like?
Tons of them, yeah. There's tons of them, but you know, I mean, where do I start? There's so many different things that happen, and so many things that are still happening. It's like it's boring, but it is also, there's moments when it's like, wow, you know, there's a lot of hurry up and wait. Parts, you know? A lot of downtime where you're sitting around waiting for a plane or waiting for, you know, the van or whatever you're waiting for.
Yeah.
Waiting for the show to happen, basically, or get to the next place. And the travel time is what takes a long time. The travel time is what kind of you can just find it sucking sometimes. Like,
that's the waiting time.
But when you get there, it's worth it.
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And you get to play and meet people and have a good time, you know.
Yeah, cool, man. What sort of, obviously touring through the States and now over to here, is there any standout venues? Obviously we're at the Basement, but without a biased opinion, what sort of cool venues have you played? Is there any like ones that you're like, man, I love that place, anywhere in the States?
Yeah, there's some good places, you know. I like, you know, there's places like Chicago, there's Empty Bottle, and there's places like, you know, New York. There used to be a place called Coney Island High that used to exist. I really used to love playing there.
Yeah.
It isn't there anymore, but unfortunately, it was a really great place to play. And at the Bowery's cool to play, New York, and I really enjoyed myself there. And a couple different places, you know. Austin used to have Emos, and it doesn't exist anymore. It's not such a big, giant venue. It's different, you know. But the Blue Flamingo used to be cool there and stuff like that, you know.
Just smaller venues are also
venues
cool,
are the best,
man.
the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
ones, man. And, you know, people are cool to you there, and as long as you're not a dick, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
People are cool, you know. Like, and my mom taught me not to be a dick, so
is there
be polite, you know, and it's good. Yeah. You have no reason to not be, you know.
That's all good, man. We'll close it up with that. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah.
This is Nick Oliveri, invisible like the sky.
Bam!